Okay, we are live. And I'm
All right.
testing out a thing where it's going live on both channels. This is it'll be the first live stream kind of on the philosophical channel. And
Fancy.
yeah, and it's set up in a way where when people watch, anybody watching from the Reasonable Vegan channel and they comment, the comments come in here that we can see. And anybody watching from the other one, the comments will come in the same spot, in the same, whatever order they happen to show up in. And you can have it go to Facebook, to all kinds of different places, and all the
Cool.
comments show up in one spot. So yeah. Um, okay, so one thing I want your help figuring out um, is I would like the definition that I think should be best to be ambiguous when it comes to the reaching sentience already. Like, I don't want within the definition or within a caveat that it has to be one way or another on if it includes the pre-sentient animals that will become sentient. Because we had that whole discussion about like if a day before a calf inside of its mother, a day before it becomes sentient, like you wouldn't value that life necessarily. Like if
I wouldn't. Yeah.
yeah, like if the cow died and somebody went for fun to kill the fetus thing in there the day
The
before it.
non-sentient fetus.
Yeah, like let's
Yeah.
say there's one person that could run up and take it and hook it up to an incubator and make it grow and become sentient, but somebody else just wants to go kill it and nobody owns that cow and it's just in nature. Like you wouldn't feel much about the thing that died that didn't become sentient yet, especially because its mother's dead, so who cares?
Right.
But so I don't need it since it's like my definition. I don't need it to go along with the idea that I maybe respect the life before it becomes sentient. But I kind of want your help figuring out a way to make it ambiguous to where I don't have to make a claim. And that's what all those ors are. Do you have that PDF I sent you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so extend moral consideration to. So this is where it could say to all non-human animals. But if it says all human animals, all non-human animals based on sentience,
Do you
do
want me to
you?
share my screen while you're talking, or
Yeah, that
yeah?
sounds good.
Okay. Uh, okay. Should be coming up momentarily.
Yeah, I haven't actually ever attempted to bring in something to add to the stream, but this works well. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so yeah, so I guess yeah. Let me know your thoughts on all those options.
All right. Let's see. So veganism is a philosophy that seeks to extend moral consideration to all non-human animals. Non-human animal species typically capable of sentience or based on capacity for sentience or based on likelihood for sentience or based on sentience. Okay, I understand what you're trying to do. The words like typically capable of sentience immediately give me the heebie-jeebies because you're it's sort of like it's bringing a non-relevant trait into the
Okay.
definition, which is
Well, let me
species, in my
explain why
opinion.
I put that there, and you can let me know if that's not a reason to do
Mhm.
it. Um, like cows, as we know it, are sentient, but we know that as a species, I don't know if you can be a cow that's alive, that's standing, but magically have all its sentience removed, and it's just like a zombie cow. But I think because the species has a likelihood of sentience, we don't have to go and test every single animal to see if they're sentient. But is that just silly
But would
overthinking?
you? Yeah. Well, so this is a conjunction. So it's like any one of these, not all need to be true.
Oh yeah. It would just be one of these things. So it would say consideration to all non-human animals, and then one of these things.
So here's a question for you. So like let's assume we could find some example where all the other three, so the capacity for sentience, the likelihood for sentience, and the based on sentience. So all those three were not true. So it was coming down to the species typically capable of sentience or not, and you had two beings there, would this be a relevant way of, like, would you really care that it's like, well, one of these species, and by typically assume you just mean like above some threshold percentage or something on average, like would that really factor into your moral like calculus?
Having all knowledge of a situation, no. But I guess it's just the idea that if, like, what if somebody killed a cow and said, like, I know cows are supposed to be sentient, but I don't know if this one was. Is that such a unrealistic idea that thinking of that element doesn't matter?
What does that accomplish that just like likelihood for sentience wouldn't accomplish?
Oh no, I think likelihood of sentience accomplishes that.
Wait, one more question about the ors. Are you
Okay.
trying to choose like one of the ors to use in the definition, or are you saying you want all of the ors in the definition?
No, correct. There's 4 options there, and I just want one to exist. I just want to be
Okay, I see.
convinced.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
No, you're good. I kind of want it to be this short thing that just says veganism is a philosophy that seeks to extend moral consideration to non-human animals.
Yeah, based on sentience is simple. That's vague. You want it vague, like that's vague, and then you can just like, if somebody is curious about what you mean, you can expand that. You can draw use like cases and give examples. But I think like you're bringing the relevant trait sentience in, and that's I don't know. To me, that's enough.
Well, and if I were to say all sentient non-human animals, then it would exclude the pre-sentient cow or whatever. So I guess that's why I like the idea of saying non-human animal based on sentient. Okay.
If that's what you're trying to accomplish, and you can bury a bit of vagueness in you're saying sentience is a relevant factor. I can explain that if I need to, like to give you examples and whatever, but it's like sentience factors in to my definition. So if you want to keep it vague, that's the way to do it.
Okay, and I think I do. Okay, so let's say that we did that. Let's say a non-human animal. Okay, so in this case, the animal would turn into animals, and then a comma, and then based on sentience.
And by vague, I'm meaning more specifically, like this is still going to tell you certain beings that would not fit into this definition and certain beings that would. The vagueness is around this specific thing about pre-sentient beings is the main one of your concern.
Yeah. Well, and then also the idea of discovering that something's sentient in the future. So saying that non-human animals based on sentience, as of now, somebody can argue like, oh, oysters are fine to have, but if in 100 years, or let's say 1,000,000 years, oysters develop sentience, then they would be added to it. So I think that's fitting. Okay.
One more thing on this too is non-human animal. So this is always like it's always kind of bugged me, the use of the word animal. I don't care that much if what you mean by animal is just like sentient thing. Does it have to be an animal?
Being. Okay. No, it doesn't. I haven't looked it up recently, but what's the definition of being?
I'm not sure.
Is that the route you would go? A non-human being?
I think that like, yeah, I think.
Because what if a flower developed sentience and then we afforded it rights? That's not a being. So
it's not. Okay, I would have assumed that would be.
Is it? I
don't know. Like that. But that's what we're trying to do. It's like some word that means that. It's like that captures anything that can be sentient, that like that thing that can have identity. We're trying to say that is
okay.
The word.
So the definition of being is the nature or essence of a person.
I gotta look up person now.
Yeah, right. Because I have a vegan friend that says animals are persons, and personally, I think that's not a route to go. But
yeah, because if by person you just mean thing that has a subjective experience,
Yeah. So a
It's sort
person
of
says a human
synonymous with.
being regarded as an individual. Um, Now, there's a second definition for person that says a
How about
category used.
entities, non-human entities or individuals?
I was thinking about entity. Yeah, yeah. Individual's kind of interesting because it almost sounds like you don't view them as mattering in a group. Like if you killed two together, it's fine. It doesn't need to mean that, but it just sounds kind of funny. Entity sounds very removed from
Hmm.
livelihood.
Yeah,
Not
I
that
know
that
what you mean.
shouldn't matter. Entity, a thing that was just an independent existence.
What about just non-humans?
Um, let's see. Okay. Veganism is philosophy that seeks to extend moral consideration to all non-humans based on sentience. Okay, if a flower develops sentience, would we call that flower a human now? Or sorry, not a human, an animal? Would it become classified as that?
No.
Okay.
Well, how about
Um,
would a sentient AI be called an animal? I think even more clearly not.
yeah, and maybe that's why I do think for veganism it should be animals, non-human animals, because like in my mind
Oh,
this is a category that is of its time. Like so
oh,
so I do think that it's worth extending moral consideration to AI that could be sentient, or if there's an alien species we didn't know of that came in. But I don't know if we would want to in advance have this philosophy um, be about that. This is about now and the past and the future that we can imagine outside of something like AI. Um,
yeah. Like here's one slight downside. Tell me if this matters to you or not. But here, an
okay.
analogy is like, I'm gonna I'm gonna set up a definition as a not like anti-slavery, and by slavery I mean people that are picking cotton in a field. And it's like,
Mm,
oh, so if like you're telling me if a different type of field that was for banana picking or something and I owned people that worked in that, that wouldn't fall under my definition. But it doesn't really matter because it's not happening right now. So it's like,
mm.
do you care about, is your whole stance here about addressing specifically what's happening here in 2023, in which case the way you have it is
Um,
probably fine, or if you want to future proof it against like rights violations or whatever you're trying to future proof it against.
I do like the idea of future proofing something, but I feel like it's the animal element is so broad that I almost feel good about that. Like so with slavery, if I was discussing it, I'd probably want to discuss it as some form of a human owning another human against their will, and it would cover all the various types of slavery. But you could separate that from the idea of somebody saying us living in Canada and the US having to work for the man and give taxes without say that that's slavery. And we could go, okay, well, that's a different type of slavery. And so when talking about like human ownership as slavery, I feel like covering animals. The reason I'm concerned with animal is because there are non-sentient animals that we call animals, so that does throw me off a bit. But
I'm less concerned with that because you have in sentience,
yeah,
so that's a conjunction, so you need both.
yeah. I guess I just feel like AI would be its own separate topic. Like do you think even though you might um, value the sentient AI, would you start factoring that into your vegan activism, or would you just have that be a
Well,
separate right you fight for?
I would. So my like vegan activism is about fighting for the biggest issues pertaining to this moral philosophy, which is about reducing rights violations to sentient beings, in my view. And so if there were like
But not
if there
humans.
because no, I would I think it's I think it does encapsulate humans, in my
Mm.
view, veganism does.
So like you would put like circumcision, whether it's male or female,
Yeah,
as a vegan category.
yes, but it's very um it's a less relevant issue to talk about in that context. It's like I'm talking about what's a good example? So if I had like a business that sold vehicles, I'm trying to create an analogy on the fly, and I'm hoping it's going to pan out in the end. Okay,
Yes.
so we sell vehicles at this, and so you're wondering if I sell cars, and I say no, I don't sell cars. All right, how do I tie this in? Let me think here. Um, what I'm trying to do is veganism is like a very broad group that has a bunch of specific rights violations issues about it. And so it's like I'm advocating in veganism, it's like animals in my view are the most violated against sentient being subcategory. And so it's like the most relevant advocacy like channel, I guess. So like specific is, yeah. But I think like, yeah, I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but
Yeah, no, it's all right. I get the idea. I want to ponder that more. I think I want to stick with animals, and even if I don't, I personally view veganism as a separate from human. I when I think of like the most important vegan things to work on, I don't think like dairy and then human circumcision and then pigs getting their teeth cut out
yeah, it's fair.
and then legalizing drugs because humans should
Well,
have the freedom and
I agree with you, and I think that common usage I think would be in alignment with what you're saying. The reason I'm saying something different is because my view of veganism is like it's a moral philosophy that is about reducing rights violations to sentient beings. And so like that's the origin of it. Like that's what I mean when I say veganism. And I know that like I might say I want a vegan meal or something, and it's like common usage wise it means other things. And so like in the context of activism, we're typically talking about helping animals, but it's like the underlying moral philosophy that I'm basing everything on when I think of veganism it like includes humans. It includes things that we don't know are sentient. It includes everything. So you could say that like veganism is a subcategory of that underlying moral philosophy as well. I think that would be fair to say. I haven't thought about it that way, but maybe I could adjust the way I think about that. It doesn't really matter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like the idea of it being something that could extend to anyone, but without like getting in the way of my views on it, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah, I
for
know what you
example,
mean.
I like the idea of somebody that doesn't care about the pre-sentience of a sentient animal or a sentient species. They can align with what I'm writing here, even if they disagree with
Yeah.
that part. And similarly, David Arnaz can he can look at mine, and to him it can include not eating roadkill, but to somebody that's okay with roadkill, it also fits in. So I do want to ponder that and maybe adjust it to beings. But yeah, let's set that aside for a sec. So now what I kind of want to figure out with you is I think you can have a couple different definitions or types of definitions for veganism. You can have a philosophy, which I think this simple one is a good one. But you can also have a definition for the practice of veganism, like that, the actions. But I feel like the actions must be on a spectrum, and there's no way for somebody to be vegan or not be vegan, which is why I like the idea of that just being a philosophical conversation for all humans to have. Like one vegan that completely is on a full vegan diet can be talking to another vegan that eats honey, and they can be like, "Oh, I want to try to convince you of this." But even if I don't convince you, like we are both of the vegan philosophy. So
It's like you're both anti-slavery, but somebody eats Hershey chocolate. You can disagree about whether that's a slavery issue or something, and still be both anti-slavery together
yeah,
philosophically. Yeah.
yeah. So like I think there's an example I sent you where you could have two vegans. So you got vegan A, vegan B. Vegan A is completely vegan and like doesn't eat milk, eggs, honey, or meat. And then vegan B doesn't eat all those things except honey. They eat honey, but they also grow their own food and they don't use any pesticides. They don't use any rodenticides. They live in a tiny little shack, so they're not taking up too much land, and maybe they're causing less suffering. Not that I think everybody needs to like completely get away from pesticide use, but would it be fair to call the person that doesn't eat the honey more vegan than the other one, or are either of them not vegan?
Are either of them not vegan? So I understand your point. Um, and I think if you define veganism as sort of um, like a utilitarian based scoreboard or something, of which you have to get like a low enough, like in golf or something, it's like you need the lowest score possible to get below par, and if you're above par then you're not vegan or something. Then
Mm-hmm.
the scenario you described, where I live in a way that reduces animal suffering or whatever criteria, if it's negative rights violations, as much as possible, I can almost like earn the ability to go and eat an animal or an animal product. I think that is a little wacky.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I
what if
think
it's not that they?
philosophically, like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what if we're just going off the actions, but if we want to, we can add in their reasoning. What if they're not thinking, I do this good thing, so I earned it, but in their mind, they look at all the things, they want to extend the moral consideration to animals, but then they look at this honey situation and they go, oh, okay, it seems like bees make a little more than they need, and so I feel like it's not harming the bees to eat some of this. Like they're not doing it because they feel like they've done enough good that they can do one little bad. They just or maybe they say that they care more about their health. I don't know if there's a different way to look at it for somebody that values their health before their veganism. Vegan Gains last night said that if humans were carnivores and they had to eat animal products, that he thinks that all humans should just let themselves die. And and so I don't know how many vegans would fall into that category. But if somebody was eating something because they felt like it was going to improve their health, but then for aside from the health, everything else was just caring about the animals.
And the question is, would I consider that kind of person vegan?
Yeah, I guess I was just pointing out a difference between eating the honey because you felt like
Oh yeah,
your calculus got you there versus you thinking it's acceptable.
yeah. Um, yeah, like I mean, I think pretty much every definition, maybe not Vegan Gains' definition, but well, maybe even his though, when you really boil it down, like there is some level of forgiveness based on some like selfish or preference based criteria. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, if because there's even in the vegan society words, it's like as far as practical and possible or whatever, and it's like, so what does that mean? It means that like if you are going to be at great personal harm or to yourself or whatever, that you can like there are exceptions that will allow you to still be vegan while doing acts that that are infringing on negative rights of animals. So yeah, like I don't know, I think mine does too. It's like generally speaking, it's about like minimizing, reducing rights violations to sentient beings, but it's like I have priorities and preferences in my life too that override that. But I like what I mean by the philosophy is like that I'm mostly associated with with that vision, I guess. So yeah, if your question is like the person thinks they need to eat it, well, was it they need to eat it, or was it they didn't understand the like
I would
the
say
harm?
in this hypothetical they don't need to eat it, but they feel like it's fine. They don't feel like it's causing enough harm to care, and they think it's good for them. And while you're responding to that, Contrarian 420 says, I am fully vegan except for organic raw honey. Can you also comment how you justify it? Because I personally don't care. Honey is kind of the least of my worries, even though I don't consume it. But I'm wondering what element, if you choose the health over the animal, or if you feel that it's not that harmful. So yeah. But yeah, sorry, Michael. What were you saying?
No, that's okay. Um, yeah, sorry. Yeah, can you just remind me what where the question was? I started reading contrarians.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. If you had an idea in your head of what makes a vegan, and then also what a vegan philosophy is, let's set the philosophy aside. If somebody told you like, oh yeah, I'm a vegan. Let's say this contrarian 420. Yeah, I'm a vegan. I don't buy animal products. I don't get makeup that has that's tested on animals. No meat, no dairy, no eggs. But I eat raw honey. Would you think in your head, you are not a vegan by my definition, but you're just not going to say it out loud because you don't want to have confrontation? Or would you just think that everybody's on a spectrum of veganism?
Um, Probably I would say both of those things are true. I think there is a spectrum of veganism. I don't think there's like it's binary, like yes or no. Maybe there's like some gray zone and like a threshold where you go over it or under it based on kind of my view of what it takes to be a vegan or something. Yeah, for the honey one, like from my understanding of what happens, like you're breeding sentient beings into existence, and for the purpose of like using their products, and you are doing what I understand to be painful things to them with wing clipping, and then also like killing at before their natural life. So it's like, yeah, I do definitely care less about insects, but it's still like it's hitting all of the like the bad things that are important to me. So it's like I am with you. I care way less about somebody eating honey than I care about somebody participating in dairy or animal ag of other sorts. But it's not based on how bad the actions to the being are. It's just how much I value the being based on their level of sentience.
Mm.
So I think those are definitely non-vegan things that are being done. Um, I think that probably would push that person beyond the threshold of what I personally view as vegan, due to the fact that it's like it's an intentional, assuming they're aware of the industry, and assuming I'm not wrong about what happens in the industry too. It's participating by their voting with their dollar in contributing to an industry that based around negative rights violations to sentient beings.
Would you prefer that they don't call themselves vegan publicly?
I don't care that much personally.
Okay, because what I'm trying to figure out.
Especially somebody like this that says I'm fully vegan except for honey. Like
Right.
I think that is very clear with respect to what people think about when they think of vegans. And it's like this person that says I'm vegan, meaning I don't buy animal like dairy or eggs. I don't wear leather. I don't go to bull riding shows or whatever. And I don't eat meat, but I eat honey. So I think that exactly what that person said is accurate, but I probably wouldn't consider this person vegan.
Gotcha. Okay. You personally wouldn't consider them vegan, but you wouldn't even in your own mind prefer that they don't call themselves vegan. Okay. Because what I'm trying to figure out is like, do I want to have a definition for the philosophy and then also a definition of what makes somebody vegan? Or I'm leaning towards that there's no need for a definition for what makes somebody vegan because it's such a spectrum that there'd be no way to pinpoint what that is. So added to this, I do have.
You don't need to pinpoint the sororities problem point either, right? Like the point where the puddle becomes a lake or whatever, or the point where a grain of sand becomes a beach. Like there's all of these things, and you don't need to necessarily know exactly how many grains of sand or whatever. But you can point to clear cases on either side, and you can say sort of the rules that go into making the decision. So like if you don't need to solve that in order to to have some criteria built into your definition if you want them there.
Yeah, so I like the idea of having like kind of a, I don't know what the word is. It wouldn't be a caveat, but having this additional thing. I just have an asterisk, and it says the ultimate goal of this philosophy, if achievable, would involve all humans not violating the negative rights of these non-animal,
Not humans.
non-human animals,
Yeah.
by intentional use of force. So I removed a bunch of nonsense I had earlier about it unwanted, and I removed harm for some reason because I don't think the harm part matters to me. Harm is included in intentional use of force and the negative rights.
Yep, I agree.
But yeah, so I feel like that sentence being added to this, but not part of the definition, fits the entire spectrum of people. Where the if achievable kind of factors into that idea of, I think in some way or another, of if you think the honey is healthy, then that's not the part that's like achievable for you if you're not convinced that it's harming the animals. Or like we've talked about with the backyard chickens,
Well,
if
yeah.
you get the rescue one, you eat the egg.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Just on the is healthy thing, like that's a bit of, so we talking like philosophically a lot, you and I, about this, and it's a very important point to differentiate from something that is healthy and something that is required to be healthy, right? Or something that would, if consumed, like make you 20% more thriving or something like that. Like those are very different. There's lots of things that can be healthy, but you don't have to eat all the things that are healthy to be healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
Well, and everybody has their limit. So, for example, I think Contrarian 420, and despite the 420 being in their name, they have really awesome comments and really cool challenges. I believe they've mentioned before that they like that honey is kind of a remedy for like when you're sick. Now, I don't think you should harm an animal to help yourself from being sick. But then again, if we're looking at sentience levels and if you have honey that came from, there's this type of thing you can have in your backyard that bees come, and it's good for them to have a home where they make the honey, and you can turn this tap and honey will spill out until you close the tap. And basically, the bees will come back and they'll eat their own honey and whatnot, but you can use some of it. And this is something my wife has always wanted to get because she likes honey, but we haven't had honey in like 8 years. But she likes the idea of there being a way to get some while leaving however much they might need, because I hear they make a little more than they need. But anyways, so like this idea of if you don't have the queen with the wings clipped and you don't have the breeding, I don't know how much. I don't know what goes into breeding, but anyway, so if you had ways that didn't have these harmful aspects, and then I don't know how it couldn't be harmful if you took too much honey, but if you are sick and you don't want to be sick, so you're looking after your well-being, and you consume some honey to get better, and it's not just for your taste buds, then
yeah, again, like
it's slightly different.
Do you though, if there's equally good alternatives?
A fair point. Like if there's studies that say like if you have a cold, this will not harm animals and it'll fix your cold just like honey would.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have reason to have a definition that would make the honey consumer be somebody I would claim is not vegan. But if I were to have philosophical conversations with anybody that consumes honey, I might urge them, especially based off my information. If I learn more about bees and the level of suffering and how much honey they need, etc., then aiming for as much of a vegan world as we could have, I might want to talk them into the alternatives for sure. Yeah, I think so.
Does that, like, so what would exclude some, like, what's the difference there such that the honey eating sick person would fit into your definition, but presumably, oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. A definition of not being vegan?
Of being vegan. right? You said they would be
Mm.
vegan in your view.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in my view, I think I just want to look at the entire spectrum of anybody that extends moral consideration to animals. So they would be.
So if I'm like, if I eat meat and I say I don't care about the death of animals, but I care about the harm, so I extend moral consideration because I don't want them to suffer, but I don't care about them dying. I fit your criteria of extending moral consideration, but I still eat
Um,
meat. Maybe I'm even a carnivore.
a carnivore. Yeah. I would say so. I mean, we'd be able to figure out if you were just saying it versus lying about it. If you were clearly doing something that, like, say, made no sense, like if you extend moral consideration, but you are consuming like ice cream or hot dogs or whatever, and you have no reason to think that any of these things are healthy, and you're doing it just for your own taste pleasure, then I would say that the philosophical conversation I would have with you at that point would involve how, like, silly that is to say that you care, but you view this as more important.
Okay,
Now,
so that
yeah.
person would be vegan in your definition.
Yeah, yeah. If I mean, anybody can claim they're anything, and I have no
Okay.
reason to think somebody's lying. So if somebody says they're vegan based on my definition, if they look at my definition and go, "Oh yeah, no, I'm totally vegan," then I'd go, "Great, okay, you're vegan. Now it's time for the conversations. Now it's time to figure out how vegan are we? What do I need to work on? And what do you need to work on as vegans that don't know everything? And maybe part of what I need to work on is reading the studies that Garland won't send me about why crop deaths are a problem. And then as I learn about them, maybe I'll pick a certain crop and go, this one, pears cause the most deaths, so no more pears for me. And I can do that research. I probably need to learn more about honey, and so same for this other person that, like, they haven't been they cut out dairy and most meats, but they're still eating fish. They haven't been convinced. Then it would take a conversation where I show them the studies showing about fish right now, and maybe someday they'll cut it, maybe someday they won't. But why should I have an arbitrary line of when I say, okay, you're officially not vegan here, when it all seems to be such a wide spectrum?
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think you have to. I'm not saying you have to. I was just asking if you
Oh no, I didn't mean
yeah.
that like how dare you think I need to. I just mean, like, I want you to convince me I should. I want you to convince me it's reasonable. It seems somewhat
Well,
reasonable to say if somebody's a carnivore when they don't have to be, that they're not vegan. But I guess I want to be shown exactly where that line is, how many pounds of anything, you know?
yeah, I like okay. When people talk to each other on the streets and they're, the street corners in bad places, and they say, "Oh, yeah, I have a friend who's vegan." It's like they mean something by those words. And
Mm.
what you're trying, if you're creating a definition for this word, you want it to, you want what that person's thinking about when they say that thing to be what you're trying to get them to say. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, if all you want people to say is like, well, oh yeah, I have a friend who's vegan, and what they mean by that is like they have a philosophy, they extend moral consideration to animals. That's
Mm-hmm.
all the information that's being, like, communicated, I guess. And
Yeah.
so
Oh, I know what you're getting at. So let me respond to that real quick.
yeah.
So I don't know if it was before the term veganism was created or not, but when I read a lot of the old papers about veganism, people would constantly refer to a strict vegan diet, or a strict, maybe a strict vegetarian diet was another way of saying a vegan diet. And so you'd have a vegetarian that just doesn't eat meat, but then a strict vegetarian diet would be no eggs, no meat, no dairy. And so I would think it would still be important, because a lot of people, when they talk about veganism, they'd say veganism isn't a diet. Veganism is this combination of everything. So it's still like, if
Yeah,
if
true.
you ask, like, what vegan things are on the menu, you don't mean what moral considerations are on the menu. So I think no matter what, you have to get specific in some cases. But
Yep.
yeah, I think in the same sense that if three people were at dinner and one was a full-on vegan and one was who I would consider a vegan, which is the contrarian 420, and then one was, say, a vegetarian or whatever, or let's just say that they were an omnivore, then like sure, within conversation, the contrarian 420 person could say like, "Oh, I'm a vegan, but I eat honey or whatever." But I would say that even then it would be a spectrum, but that it might be worth saying like, oh, I'm a vegan that follows a strict vegan diet, where Wendy, who I want to have a conversation with you on, I think you put a comment in there about wanting to talk to her about fish. So she went from cutting it all out to now she's vegan except for fish. And she wants to do another talk, and I thought it'd be cool to have you in on that one. But she could say, you know, I'm a vegan, and I have a pescatarian diet, and other people could say I follow a strict vegan diet, or I don't know what you would say for actionable things that don't include the diet. Would you say I'm an actionable vegan if you're referring to the not buying leather and fur and makeup? I don't think my definition change
Well, yeah, it's
is
strictly
complicating
vegan
things.
shopping habits or something. Yeah, you might be
Strictly,
right. It's like
yeah.
it's like you have and you're right. That is true, I think, by what many definitions of veganism mean is like there's a philosophy side. You have to be on side with, you have to agree with these moral principles or whatever outlined in the theory. And then there's like the action veganism stuff, which generally corresponds to like what you do. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
when people, I think, and what most people on those street corners are saying I'm vegan, they're referring to what they eat primarily, or like
Yeah.
what they buy and stuff too. But I think most people think about it in terms of what they eat. So yeah, okay, I can back off of that because we're talking about the philosophical side, which is probably the less often discussed version of the word
Mm-hmm.
in common
Yeah,
usage.
well, no, it's all right. I wanted to talk about the diet part just because if you had reason to convince me that there should be a definition for the diet aside from the option of people calling themselves strict vegan,
Well, I don't
strict
think they
vegan
could say I have a
eaters.
vegan diet. I don't even think you need strict. I wouldn't even consider a honey eating or fish eating person to be able to say that I eat a vegan diet, unless they're qualifying it. I eat a vegan diet except for
Oh,
honey, as the contrarian did.
oh yeah, yeah. No, that's a decent point. Yeah. Somebody could say I'm a vegan, but I eat honey, where they wouldn't say I eat a vegan diet. Yeah. Fair enough. Um, yeah. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So what do you think? Okay, so if you were going to make your own definition, which I don't even know if many people would have any interest in doing it anyways. Let's say that a definition didn't exist. So you're aware that I'm writing mine. You're welcome to steal anything from mine you want. In fact, I think most of mine now has been molded to be mostly changes from you. Um, but let's say
So
that there
that's
was
R&D, Carson. Rob and duplicate.
but let's say that there's no vegan society definition. Nobody came up with one. Everybody in the world's all like, hey, I wonder if anybody's ever going to come up with one. And then Michael's all like, you know what? I think I'm going to do it. Um, would you have one referring to actionable practices and then one referring to the philosophy? And what would both those look like? And also, it's 2:15 now, my end. I'm
Oh yeah,
free. I'm
yeah. I
fine,
got
but
to
I
get going
know
pretty
that.
soon. Yeah, I
Okay,
got
so
in the next 5 minutes. We should wrap it up for
okay,
me.
bail out whenever you want. Okay, so
Okay.
definition, go for it.
Yeah. So what I would like to do is give that a bit more thought to articulate the more precise wording of what I would want to say. It would, in general, I think it would be something like, um, I would say something like a vegan is one who, um,
You can just read it right here if you agree with this one.
yeah, yeah, I like the Sikhs. I think I like that. Um, yeah, I don't know how to get around the practicable and possible part, but like there'd be something in there about sentient beings I would have as mine, and there would be something about negative rights violations, and reducing those. So those are the elements. I don't know quite how I would combine those words.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Now that you brought it up, I meant to ask your opinion just on phrasing. The original definition is somewhat like this, but the idea of a philosophy that
What
seeks.
about this? What if
Okay.
it's less, what if it is an action-based thing, and I just say veganism is, like, not maybe that's about, you can't define something by what it isn't, but like veganism is not committing rights violations, to not participating in rights violations to sentient beings, negative rights violations to sentient beings.
Okay. Well, in that case, would you consider something like a defense of one's house a rights violation? Like, so you think the mice should be out of your house because they chew up the foundation. Somebody can't afford to get a humane trap or whatever, so they just kill them. Is it fair to say that this animal doing something unintentionally, that if you kill it for your own benefit, that it's going against that?
Um, I would probably, yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this more, because from what I just said, I think that would be out of scope. It would be an out of scope decision, and it would be like the definition was around your participation in negative rights violations, and when you're acting in, like, defense of yourself or property, it's like it's not a negative rights violation, because it's protected by defense of self or property. But
Okay. What about?
sorry,
Mhm.
but
No, you're fine.
I do want those considerations in my definition, so I do want to update it.
Okay. Well, what
Yeah.
about if you aren't doing it of defensive property, but it's to create property? You declare that this tree is yours. There's squirrels in it. There's birds in it. You might give them the benefit of like making a noise so they leave before you cut it down, but you're choosing to cut it down because you want to make shelter. Would this be
Yeah.
a rights violation?
Yeah, that is the rub, is it not? And that's a great question, and I have a perfect answer for it, which I will give to you on the next
Sounds good,
time
man.
we talk.
All right. Sounds good. I'm going to
Yeah,
stay and maybe talk to some people here real quick, but I'll talk to you soon.
yeah,
Take
totally.
care.
Okay, sounds good.
See ya.
Thanks, chat. See you guys later.
All right. I'm going to go through and respond to a couple things real quick. Let's see. Okay. Healthy means to be whole, to be in harmony with the body, health. This is where vegans are going. Harmonious relationships. Interesting. Okay. And what happens if you get in a car and accidentally go to the ER? The vast majority of treatments they would give involve animal testing, animal products, plastics, etc. Would you deny treatment? Yeah, that's kind of one of the main points. Is I think we need to look after ourselves, and then from that point on, take care of animals the best we can. So I don't know if I would have been in favor of doing the testing on animals for the majority of our medical stuff. But if we look at something we get from testing on animals, a medical benefit, then depending on how much I might value that benefit, I might say it's worth it. But in general, I think our aim should be for not exploiting animals, not which I do need to decide if I want the exploitation element to be in there. Said moral consideration. Okay. But yeah, I think that's worth thinking about. Garuda, if honey is vegan, then dairy from happy cows and backyard eggs and happy chickens is also vegan. It depends on how you look at it and what you think is fine. So dairy from happy cows is kind of different, because if you force it to be trapped in an area for your benefit, the one thing I view slightly different about chickens is I'm torn on the rescue idea. So if you're rescuing a chicken and you put it in your backyard and it lays eggs and those eggs aren't going to become anything, then using them seems fine. but you wouldn't want to put it in demand, the idea of having the chickens. Yeah. Alrighty. Okay, turning Veganese. We have a debate coming up. Let's set that up soon. Contrarian 420 says, let's see. It's a bit silly to turn away someone who is 99.99% vegan like myself if I am out for eating a little honey or using it on burns. Then you are hobbling the movement for the vast majority of people. Oh, completely, 100%. Well, actually, 99.99%. You are completely right. Now, if somebody feels that it's reasonable to debate you on this and to challenge you on your ideas, sure. I mean, have at it. But to take somebody that cut out meat, dairy, eggs, and doesn't buy the fur and the leather and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like is an activist and any of these different things and wanting to end SeaWorld and would never ride a horse and all these things, but they feel fine consuming honey based on their research and their knowledge on it. That's just silly to shut them out. Yeah, I mean, if you have a definition and you think somebody doesn't fit the definition or whatever, but to not view them as a good person and that be a good thing, I just find that to be silly. Okay. Let's see. This is a bit. Let's see. Okay. Turning Veganese said there's no such thing as 99.9% vegan. Yeah, I mean, you say that, but are you? We'll have to figure this out when we do our debate. But I would say that due to crop deaths, we're all 99.99% vegan, and to various different degrees. We're probably all somewhere between 90 and 99.99% vegan, depending on how you look at the definition. But yeah, this is a perfect example. We don't all need to agree with each other, but the idea of AJ turning Viennese here, calling Contrarian 420 not a vegan because of this element. First of all, you have to figure out what you mean by vegan. Because you have the philosophy side, you have the actionable side. Oftentimes people mean a combination of the two. And but here's the thing. You might think that this person shouldn't take honey for their common cold or for fixing a burn, but you would probably get a vaccine or something that uses egg in it. Or somebody might go get a tattoo if all the tattoo artists in their state don't have vegan ink. So yeah, there's always just an arbitrary line, and it's kind of silly. And we should all be going for the best. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Contrarian 420. I don't know if you're interested in coming on the live streams and talking, but maybe you come on and talk when I have AJ on sometime, and you guys can hash it out. Okay, Contrarian 420. Vegan diets don't exist, actually. Whatever a vegan eats is their vegan diet. Of course, they all contain 0 animals. Okay, I'm going to cut it off there. But yeah, it's good talking, guys. Take care, and let's talk again soon.